I'm sorry.
All right.
Hold on.
Sorry. Thank you. This is a special meeting of the School Board of Kenosha Unified District Number 1. Notice of the special meeting was given to the public by forwarding a copy of the notice to all requesting radio stations in the Kenosha News. The purpose of the special meeting is to agenda review for March 25th, regular board meeting, and all the items listed there, and discussion board self-assessment presentation by Kelly Thompson, WASB consultant, and then at the end, views and comments by the people.
Okay, and with that, Mr. Haithcock.
Thanks. This is just our yearly request to submit and implement the Head Start continuation grant for the 25-26 school year, serving 330 students. The grant amount is the grant amount is $2,681,087. It would be very similar to grants that we have submitted every year. This time we plan to include an additional half-day classroom at Bose.
Questions for Mr. Haithcock? Okay, next.
Hi. The capital projects plan will be presented by Mr. Finnemore. He's not here right now. He's at a city meeting right now on behalf of the district. The capital budget, one of the things that we'll be talking about here shortly is the plan to keep that at $1 million. Typically, that capital budget, the capital projects budget, is at $2 million. So the number of projects that are on that list is less. I believe it includes fixing some of our high needs. I think there was a Whittier roof on there, and a parking lot is on there as well. Mr. Finnemore will be here to talk about that in depth, but it's a reduced list due to that. Also finishing up some of the LED conversions that are in the district. This is the last year of that.
Questions for Dr. Weiss?
Okay. With that, Tark and I, we're hoping to spend about half an hour or so on the budget, where we're at with the budget after the referendum failed. So there will be a couple of items here that we'll be discussing. We hope we'll have about 10 minutes for the presentation. Hopefully be able to answer any questions the board has after that.
All right, you jump right in, and we're going to be presenting up here on the screen.
So one of the way that we're looking at the budget moving forward is looking at three categories of items. Long-term hold items are items that are on, we don't have a date where we'd implement them until we get a new revenue or find some other place in the budget. These items are on what we're calling a long-term hold. That involves our controlled entrances, updating some of our security hardware, security systems. High school and elementary prep time are also on that longer-term hold category. Short-term hold, these are items that we know we cannot delay more than a short amount of time, maybe a year. Wouldn't want to go much longer than that. We're looking at our technology refresh, restoring that budget. Major maintenance, cutting that, as I mentioned earlier, from $2 million to $1 million. Our curricular materials, cutting that to about just doing $500,000 for the middle school science. And staff compensation. As we were going through the talking about the referendum, one of the things that I did mention is that without the referendum, I'd be recommending a wage freeze, and that item is represented here. We also have, and we'll be going into this in a little bit more depth on the next slide, recommended reductions. And we have staffing adjustments that we'll be talking about, as well as program reductions and cuts that we'll be going through here in a moment too. just it's important to note that this is very early in the budgeting cycle. Um, there's still a lot of moving parts that we don't know yet. The state budget. Yesterday, Dr. Price, Ms. Landry, and Mr. Attorney and I were at the Capitol, state Capitol, in advocating for more resources for our district. Not sure where the state budget's going to land, but that could impact some of these items that we'd want to bring back. Right now, this is what we know in March. Like I said, this is very early in the budgeting cycle, especially in a new biennium budget for the state.
Okay, I'm going to take the next couple slides here. So we're going to go through, for the sake of transparency, we're going to revisit what our original budget projections were and then tell you where we are now with the latest and greatest information. So how did we get here? This first slide represents our revenue change for next year projected. As Dr. Weiss mentioned, we still don't have a state budget, so this is projecting, and this is assuming that the revenue limit change will contain the governor's veto that gave us $325 per pupil increase for the next 400 years, which is being debated, but we're going to assume that stays in here. We have updated our enrollment. We were previously anticipating about a 335 decline in student enrollment for next year. That number has gone up to about 550 for next year. This number here, the revenue limit increase, doesn't change much for the first year because of the way the formula is designed. What will happen is our base will reduce, but we will get to take advantage of a greater declining enrollment exemption for next year. So we won't feel that hurt of the additional almost 200 some FTE until the years after that. This line down here is the per pupil categorical aid, where we get $742 per pupil. Because of the additional declining enrollment, this number did change, so it's a further decline. So all in all, we're looking at additional revenue of about $3.5 million. Now we're going to go to the expenses. This should look familiar. This is what we're presenting when we're presenting the referenda information. I want to make sure everybody understands, because there's been so much misinformation being tossed out there. We were not saying we had a $19 million or a $23 million deficit. Words matter here. This was a projected budget shortfall given the items that we were expected to fund. You understand the difference there? It's not that we were $19 million in the hole going into the year. We're going to walk through these items again. The structural deficit was originally projected at $1.8 million. That is the range here. We adopted a $800,000 deficit budget this year. We also added to that number a little over $1 million in case the computer aid and the personal property aid exemption money were to get reversed and come back under the revenue limits. We would have had to account for that. So we were trying to make sure that we could take care of that. And then we also had previously K-Tech, when it was a charter school, we were accounting for abnormally low K-Tech enrollment numbers this year and setting aside some money in case the K-Tech enrollment grew. That now is a non-issue because K-Tech is no longer a charter school, and now we've reabsorbed that enrollment like our other choice and boundary schools. All these other items everybody should still be familiar with. This totals up to $25.8 million of expenses. So if we were expected to fund all of these items, $25 million added expense, only $3.5 million added revenue gave us the deficit of around $22.5 million, rounded to 23 for the referenda question. That included these items down here too for the security. Now we're going to fast forward to failed scenario. So now that we do not have a past referendum, now we're going back and we're saying, let's identify the pieces, as Dr. Weiss just did. Down here, high school prep time and the security money, those are the long-term hold items. So you'll notice now in the failed scenario, $0, because we're not recommending that those are funded in this budget. And while we're talking about security, more false information in the public out there, we have not borrowed those funds. That would have been the next step if the referendum passed. Then the question would have come back to the school board to approve the borrowing of about $12.5 million to fund those projects. They would have been funded by a 3-year or a $3 million for 5-year line item to pay back that loan. That has not happened because the referendum failed. 100% clear. We did not borrow those funds. Dr. Weiss then mentioned that other bucket, the short-term hold items. So this is where we're talking about restoring the major maintenance budget and restoring the tech refresh budget. Items that are still being under review, but in this current scenario, staff compensation on hold until we can figure things out. And then the curriculum adoption, instead of the $2 million restoration, we still have some critical needs. I believe it's Ms. Tyndall, it's science at the middle school level. Those are the immediate needs. So
moving to Lakeview Choice School, we have some curriculum needs there as well. So that amount will be a temporary fix for the adoptions that were to happen this year.
Yeah.
So we have some history classes that we're just forgoing, and we have high school science that we're hoping we can do something creatively with, but we do have a middle school science need. They literally will not have any materials, so we will need to do something with that.
So in other words, we're saying the bare minimum that we need is the $500,000 for the curriculum adoptions, right? So now we're talking about $800,000 on the structural deficit, zeros here. We still need to restore what we had previously funded under ESSER. That still doesn't go away. Health insurance has been revised to 9.9%. That's the final number from United Healthcare. We were capped at 11%. Given the failed referendum, we are getting a little bit of a break on that, but there's a plus and minus here. Dental insurance is going up 6%, and we had to reabsorb the former KTEC staff. There's a plus and a minus there. So now that KTEC is no longer a charter school of ours, all that staff now at the new Lakeview K8, we have to account for the health insurance costs and the staff costs. Those all now become part of our regular choice programs. We'll see some savings on the other end of it because the staffing model can now be different, and we won't be doing the 80% per pupil on the revenue. All in all, we will save money by not having that school as a charter, but there's pluses and minuses in this budget. And then transportation costs increasing, that's part of the contract. These things have to happen. These are normal inflationary increases. So now if you add up this column, we're looking at about $8 million of added expense with still only $3.5 million of additional revenue, giving us what we need to find just to balance the budget in this scenario, another $4.5 million. Pause there in case there's questions. Does that make sense, everybody?
Question, Dr. Price?
Could we just go back to the curriculum real quick? I was just going to try to ask about, maybe this is for Wendy, what the costs are for implementing the science of reading, what type of costs in terms of materials and everything that's been attributed to that one.
So to revise our curriculum, that is our staff's work to do. So we did not have to purchase any new curriculum. So elementary ELA was not on the adoption cycle last year or this year. We did incur costs with testing, materials, with professional learning, and with some of the rewrite work that our staff did, but we did not have curriculum costs. We did not adopt new curriculum. We did purchase, at the last meeting where Mary and team went through things, we purchased some of those decodables, which is a hefty chunk. So our T&L budget, and that was 2 years ago that we did that. So yes, we have incurred some costs, but they're not included in that $2 million. That would be used for the cycle of adopting new curriculum overall every 7 years for every content area that we have.
I was just going to add, I think the last number I saw on that was over $100,000 of between the professional development and the binders for the testing, the Ames Web.
Yes, and then we did add the reading lead stipend, and that I believe comes out to right now about $83,000, and the board had approved up to $100,000. So as of this point in time, that's what's been incurred.
Mr. Tierney?
I had a couple questions. So we have 19 instructional coaches ish, one for each school, I believe.
More than that. It's about 30, I believe.
Okay, so
30? Yeah, 30 district funded, and there's a couple that are grant funded.
We have one at each school, not just elementary. So I think your 19 number may be from elementary, but we have a coach at every middle and every high.
Okay, so if we were to, in theory, get rid of that, wouldn't that pretty much take us out of, it'd be over half of our debt we have to reduce if we just got rid of the instructional coach?
The value, what we're spending on instructional coaches is going to be somewhere in the ballpark of $4 million.
Okay, that seems pretty easy. And then I have another question. And I'm sorry to ask this like that, but I didn't get to see your contract before we renewed it. Did you get a pay freeze, or did we give you a raise from last year to this year?
Me personally, I followed the same. Going into this year, I believe I did the same percentage as the rest of the staff. Yeah.
So the one we just renewed was a 2%
But if
increase?
there's a right, so that was the 2% going into this school year. If there's a staff freeze, that includes me.
So the contract we just renewed, if it had a 2% increase, that would be taken away if we freeze everybody's staff, everybody's raises.
Right. So I
just don't know because we didn't see
my
your
raise
contract.
has been the same raise as the rest of the staff has gotten.
Right.
So,
Okay, so-
last year I think it was a
2%.
2%, and that's what I got. If there's a pay freeze, that would include me as well.
Okay, I just because we just approved your contract, so wouldn't that have?
So what it says in my contract is not less than. So it puts a minimum amount in what I was making this year, and it's pretty standard for any ASD contract. Or any teacher contracts as well. It'll say not less than X. It may be more based on negotiations.
Okay, like I said, I'm sorry to ask. We just didn't go over the
No.
contract, so I don't.
It's public record.
Mrs. Tyndall, did you wish to respond to the instructional coaches? I know that they are working with Act 20 at the elementary.
Yeah, so coaches work with teachers to implement Tier 1 instruction and do a multitude of other things related to any the needs of the school in terms of curriculum, assessment, and instruction. So they are very, very busy people embedded in the day-to-day classrooms and supports that students receive. So through Act 20, they're responsible for delivering the professional learning to teachers that involve things like the assessment pieces. We trained them to train their staffs. So with the principal and themselves, they had that responsibility. Things like implementing the Dakotables I was just speaking about. They were in charge at the elementary level. They were in charge of getting those curriculum materials into the hands of teachers and helping them unpack the curriculum and understand where a curriculum resource will fit within the design of your ELA lesson. At the middle and highs, they do the same type of thing. A lot of professional learning is led by our instructional coaches. They help with all of the assessments that are given at all levels. They are the one-to-one with teachers. When I, as a teacher, want to improve my instructional practice, I am coached by my coach then. I go through a coaching cycle. That might be a mini, that might be a full cycle, but that is how we improve instructional practices in the classroom.
Mr.
Okay.
Tierney.
I mean, I understand the concept, and I'm sure there's some great instructional coaches doing what you're saying. I guarantee you there are. But you have other instructional coaches being hall monitors. You have other instructional coaches being secretaries. You have other I haven't met or talked to a singular teacher that their ability to teach their students, the students' lives would be affected negatively at all by getting rid of them. That's why I say it's a huge cost savings. And if we're going to save money and we have to reduce things, we need to make sure that the students are the priority. The teachers that touch students daily, that not touch, but are with students daily, are in the classroom, are boots on the ground with our kids, are way more important, in my opinion, and the opinion of many teachers, than an instructional coach.
So Kevin just shivered when you said that. I understand that, and I'd like to speak with you after the meeting regarding what input you're getting. Our instructional coaches are really our connection to our teachers. They do collaboration here and then collaboration with their teachers. They are teacher leaders in many, many respects. So I'm concerned that you're hearing those things, and I can absolutely speak to you.
Can I just weigh in? Yeah, because in Illinois, we call them teacher leaders. So essentially, these teacher leaders are curriculum experts, and to the end that we make sure that we're using them efficiently, effectively. I hear you, Bob, but I mean, teacher leaders are really the folks that are doing the teaching, not only in the classroom, but across the district or sometimes across other districts. Oh, well, that's what we call it in Illinois. Yeah, thanks.
I'll just add too that if you asked our principals, that would be one of the very last things they would choose to cut. They don't, because we have goals that say we're going to try to improve student achievement by 12%. And so we do have some proposals to cut some staff, but that would not be what our principals or anyone in teaching and learning or school leadership would recommend cutting. Those are critical positions from my perspective and from principal perspective.
Ms. Schmeling?
I get different answers when I have reached out to certain people at Frank, Gravenel, to ask them, how are your instructional coaches? Everybody has a different reason why they would need them, I guess, the staff would. But what data are we using instead of feelings? What facts do we have that they're effective? Who's asking the questions within the school? Not just the principal, but the teachers. Hey, fourth grade teacher, how's it going with the instructional coach? We have to go with data and if they're, not that they're valued, but if they're needed or if they are a asset to the school. So how are we evaluating these things to be able to keep someone at a price of, I don't even know what they make. So
They're a teacher contract.
okay. So anywhere between 60 and 98,000. So if we're keeping these instructional coaches, we have to be able to evaluate their worth and not just we need them or I feel she's great. Well, then maybe 3 teachers don't feel she's great, or there could be personality conflict. There has to be some measurement of how they're doing to be able to keep them, like any other job in the world. Like, you have to evaluate that. So that's where I'm stepping back and I'm looking at a numbers thing and an effectiveness and how they add to a child's learning or to a teacher's ability to help them learn. So how are we doing that as a district?
Mrs. Landry?
So I completely agree. I really feel that we should be including more people in on these decisions. I feel like there's people in the community that have a lot of good ideas. Teachers that I've heard from, it's the same as Bob. I'm hearing that they do a lot of administration work. That's what they're mainly used for. I'm sorry if that's not what you guys want to hear, but that's what I've been hearing. That's what Bob's been hearing. That's what Christine's heard. I mean,
But I
yeah.
did some are positive. So I said, how's your instructional coach?
Yeah.
We love them. They help. You know, it depends on the environment. Frank is completely different than a different environment.
Yeah.
That's why we have to have an evaluation system, a data. You know, how are we compiling information to say she's worth it, he's worth it?
Yeah, and I feel like the people that are actually working with the students, those are our most valuable assets right there. They're the ones with their hands on. They're in the classrooms. I just feel like we don't need all of these instructional coaches. I mean, maybe some schools need them more than others, but I think we need to listen to the teachers, listen to the staff and the principals, and see what they say as well.
And what I heard, Dr. Weiss, why don't you take over?
Sure. I get real, these conversations make me very uneasy because I think that there's people that without them in the building, it's tough to quantify what somebody does on a daily basis. And there's work being done by everybody in the district. And if that work's not getting done by one group, it's going to fall on somebody else. If there's work not being done by the instructional coach, it's going to fall on the principal. And right now, I'm not quite sure, given some of our challenges with academics, with behavior, with making sure schools run smoothly. I'm concerned that putting more work on a principal will cause something major to suffer. But again, I understand, and when it turns into when it comes to reduction time, this is one of those conversations I hate the most, because everybody is working hard for kids, and I just want to make sure that staff that's listening to this don't walk away feeling less valued. I just want to caution us on that, because I would say that everybody that I've met and worked with is here to do their best for kids. And these are tough decisions, and these are tough times that we find ourselves in. I just want to make sure that we don't send the wrong message to our staff.
Tarek? Next. Oh, sorry, Bob.
Yeah, and I hope nobody took what I was get rid of instructional as get rid of the human beings doing the work. I'm saying put them down in the classroom. We're paying; it would save the money. Put them down in the classroom. That's all. I'm not saying off the plank with the instruction. I'm not saying that. So that was my intention at all.
Right. I
so
just want to make sure
I know
that
what you were saying. I agree, though. Thinking back, I'm like, no, I just sounded pretty savage. So I get it. So I don't want to.
Thanks, Bob.
I'm sorry, just because I have to scoot to go teach, I'd wanted to get one hypothetical in. I know we don't like to deal with hypotheticals, but when we were lobbying, going to the offices yesterday, we heard some encouraging things and some difficult things. One of the difficult things was a scenario where a budget doesn't get passed, right? And I'm sure you're paying attention to that. Can you just speak real quick to that, or if you're going to do it later, I'll catch the notes from everybody else.
Really briefly, if we are hearing that there could be a delay, and the delay would mean status quo. So we'd be funded at the current levels that we have right now, which is kind of what we're building our initial projections on. All right, then if we can go to the next slide, Dr. Weiss.
Yep. So looking at, and we're just talking about that area of reductions. So there were the three buckets. This is the last bucket, the reduction bucket that I just want to be clear on. And these are, if we were able to find savings in other, if the budget comes through for us, these would be things that we'd be looking to put back. Increasing class sizes would be a result of some of our reductions. As we're going through this process, the staffing process right now, we are doing our best to safeguard the K-3 classroom and make sure that we do not have split classes in that area as we're going through staffing. And we want to do our best to keep class sizes at the K-3 as manageable as possible and as low as possible, but that does put pressure on the rest of the grades. The second one is incorporating non-classroom teaching positions back into the classroom. We're in the process, so there are some positions that we are looking at in moving back into the classroom. Suspending our recognition committee budget. This is one of our retention items that we are looking to cut. And then as we go through the ASTs, the administrative, supervisory, and technical positions, we're reviewing those. And as vacancies occur, we're looking to make cuts in those positions through attrition. And that's not filling. So for example, if a principal position opens up, somebody who had a position at the ESC moves into it, we'd be looking not to fill that position in the ESC. So those are some ways that we're looking for cost savings at the AST level. There are also some items that we have not completed our full review on. These are items that are still under review that we're still looking at support staff, our ESP and ASP groups, looking at our user fees for co-curricular, extracurricular, and instrumental music rental, looking at restructuring the academies at Indian Trail into pathways while minimizing impact on currently enrolled students. And I want to stress that part. So if students are currently enrolled or were accepted to attend Indian Trail in the academies, that's not the group that we're looking at. We're looking to phase that out over time, but moving from the academies to a pathways. Exploring the replacement of MAP testing. That's something that's on our list. We're wondering how extensive we can do that. And then we're also taking a look at potential reductions in fine arts and athletics as we move forward. And I guess I can pause there before we get into the next if there's any questions.
Mr. Tierney?
What would the savings be if we got rid of or turned Indian Trail into pathways instead of academies?
Right now, our initial is coming in right around $500,000 between transportation and staffing.
Yeah, I feel like okay.
What difference what's the difference? What happens?
So it would be the and this is still under review. So I just want to preface it by saying that it would be not having, not mixing, having a communications English, and it would just be English, or a communications or a med-sci biology. It would just be biology. There'd also be a reduction in the shuttle buses that transport students from the comprehensives to the academies. So it would just be more, as we're going through this, it's almost like a form of right sizing at a high school. As the enrollment at Indian Trail drops, it becomes more challenging to separate classes and to schedule those as efficiently as possible. So that really is what that is about at with the academies.
Do we have a decline in kids trying to get into the academy? Is that
We do.
population?
Yeah,
go down?
we have a significant decline
Okay.
of students in the academies.
Like applying to get into them or the lottery or whatever. However you get in them.
What did you say?
Do you got to apply to like a lottery system or something to get in those, or do you just apply to go to like
Yes,
communications?
you apply, and if I'll give you an example. One of the academies right now has accepted 30 students. and there's some on the wait list, because if we were to accept 12 more students, we would be running classes that were well under class size policy.
No, I get that, but it
So,
seems like
yes,
there's a
there is
need.
a wait
People want
list.
to be in the academies. We
Yes,
just,
there's an application process, or there's a yes.
I just
a
feel like it'd be
process.
taking away something
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
kids that they want to.
And
I
with
know a
that-
lot of kids go to Indian Trail excited to go to the biomed. I want to go be a nurse, so they do biomed, and then if you get rid of that, then what's
They can still
Doesn't
take the
seem good.
classes that would lead to that, but having them segregated into academies is where it would be. So that's the idea of the pathways. You could still
access
You could
those.
still access the courses. It just wouldn't be in the academy model. So you'd be in English 9 with the
the
entire
comprehensive side.
Indian Trail student body, but then we would still have those electives for the pathways to get the same offerings.
Other questions? Okay.
I'll just say that that pathway model, it's a pretty significant changeover where kids could get into pathways at their high school, take those equivalent courses. So kids that were into like the biomed idea could do that at Bradford, Tremper, and Indian Trail. It'd be based on a designated list of electives that they would take to get like that designation when they graduate.
Okay. Next, we had mentioned previously the AST group, and this is another thing where we want to bring some clarity because there's some misinformation in the public as well. And it does get confusing, but when we say AST group, we're referring to a mix of administrative, supervisory, and technical positions. So there's both exempt and non-exempt employees in this group. Some of the stuff that we've seen online conveniently held off the 24-25 school year, which, as you know, this is the first year that we've had the full right sizing impact. So it appeared that we had a increase in administrators, but there's context missing. In 2017, remember, we had what was called a miscellaneous group in the district. Those were staff that were, for lack of a better term, in an unrepresented bargaining group. They were not in a bargaining group. They were in a standalone, unrepresented group. So this is back to CBA days, collective bargaining days. In 2017, the district finally said, no more miscellaneous, fit these staff members into existing groups. When they did that, 35 of the FTE that were formerly miscellaneous moved into the AST group. So if you're looking at an analysis like was put out online that said, over the last 10 years, the district has added administrators. We didn't add headcount. We reclassified 35 positions into the AST group. And I'll show you graphically what that means. And there were some also that were grant funded that were added positions to go along with the grants. What this represents is the history going all the way back to 2013-14 to today of the different classifications, the different sections. In the light color here is administrative, supervisory in purple, and then in that bluish is the technical. This first slide is the district-funded ASTs. So in today's terms, 2014-15, the district-funded ASTs total up to 141.7. You have 83.2 of the administrative, 12 supervisory, 46.5 technical. Compare that to last year. This is right sizing. We did reduce administrative staff there. We did reduce technical staff. We did reduce supervisory staff. And then this is just calling out in 2017, you see the big jump from here to here. That's that miscellaneous reclassification. So it looks like we added administrators. We did not add headcount. We reclassified. Pause there for questions. Get it? This next slide shows the grant-funded AST positions and the history of those. And over the years, certain grants allowed us to add positions while we had the grant, or there are some positions that are tied to like our Title I, our IDEA grant, our special ed grant. We did have some ESSER in here, all across the board, but these are grant-funded positions. There are no supervisory positions under the grants. It's only been some administrative and technical over the years.
Tierney?
Are any of the these people that are they still on grant? Like it's still funded through a grant, or were they a grant funded them? Now the grant is not there anymore, and they're still there. Are there any of those?
Some of those over here are no longer there, but everything in 24-25 here, these
That's
are
all
still
being
supported
funded
by the grant.
By a grant, okay.
Yeah, and
'Cause I hear that a
existing
lot,
grant.
like unfunded. You know, like somebody comes in on a grant, the grant runs out, we keep that person. And I've heard that. I don't know if it's. Just want to make sure.
These are primarily going to be like Title I and IDEA now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that does it for our budget presentation. I know we ran a little over time.
Mrs. Schmeling? You did.
So actually, I understood all that AST with the technical and the 2017. So I knew that. However, I think we're going to run into a lot of trouble having the AST with the technical moving into positions where they have 15 years in and can retire at 55. First of all, who retires at 55? And secondly, who gets 15 years in and retires? So that whole healthcare thing needs to be overhauled with that retirement. I'm not even sure if this is where I talk about this, but that is something that absolutely needs to be starting to grandfather out. Everybody's done it. Uline's done it. Abbey's done it. Frederick South has done it. Everybody's done it. So we have to start looking at that to save money. We cannot afford, nor are we fully funded. So what are we funded? I don't want to miss. Someone asked me the other day and I couldn't tell them.
Yeah, I can pull that up here quick, but we don't have a fully funded OPEB, which is Other Post-Employment Benefits Program.
Right.
So what you're talking about is something that we are talking
Looking at.
about reviewing it.
Yeah. I just really, now that I'm going to be off the board, it almost brings anxiety because that was going to be my next thing that I was coming after, because I'm like, we can't continue to function like that in a district. And people have to wrap their heads around the fact that every single entity out in the outside world is doing this. So we're not attacking anyone. We're not attacking teachers. We're not attacking staff. This is the way that things are happening. Pensions are different. Healthcare is different. Everything's different. So we have to do, and we have to be do our due diligence in the finance to be able to carry through and be more fully funded.
And I can answer your question now. So our last study determined that we had a total OPEB liability of about $80 million. We've made a lot of progress. We have $65 million of that funded. That's the assets in the trust, so it's $15 million unfunded.
Oh, it's better. So
It's
more
a lot
80,
better than
so
what it was. A lot
almost
better.
80%.
A lot better.
Okay.
And that's on par with national average of
Where-
pensions funded.
Okay.
And Tark, phasing out the teacher retirement through the district would not give us very much immediate savings, correct?
Not immediate, it's more long term. So the way that works is we are charging, for lack of a better term, a percentage of salary as a current benefit that funds the trust. So we gain when we are able to set aside more in the trust than we're spending. So with the retirees. What Ms. Schmeling was referring to is right now our OPEB promise, our post-employment promise, is the value of a single package or the value of a family package, whatever that may be 30 years from now when somebody finally retires. So the problem is when that gets into the hands of an actuary and they start looking at inflation and they start looking at all that stuff, they're trying to figure out what is a $30,000 family health insurance package going to cost 30 years from now, and it's not 30,000. So when you start applying those numbers, there are different strategies that we've previously talked about with the board that you could make it a fixed funding thing where for every certain number of years you get a fixed dollar amount where you kind of take the inflationary risk out of it, there's multiple different strategies that can be discussed.
Other questions? Nobody else has that look, so. I'll miss you so much. All right, Dr. Thompson?
I'll wait for it.
Dr. Weiss, we
Oh,
didn't
I am sorry, I
finish.
jumped ahead. Please
Thank you,
join
Mrs.
us.
Landry.
These are quick ones, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm glad you're on the ball.
Yep. The other two items for the agenda review, we'll have our standing committee meeting update, recapping the work of the committees from February 11th, those 4 committees. And then we'll have a resolution in honor of Cesar Chavez Day for 2025 actually. That's the annual resolution we do. So those are the items that'll be on the agenda. Now we're ready, Dr. Thompson. Sorry. Yeah, we can take a 5-minute transition break. And I'll introduce you when we come back from break. I can introduce you when we come back from breaks. Okay. For the next agenda item, actually the first one, just doing these out of order a bit. Dr. Kelly Thompson is with us from WASB. Dr. Thompson was a superintendent at Muskego Norway Schools for quite a
11 years.
11 years.
30 years though total. I was in the district.
Yeah. So she's with us to this evening to go over the school board self-assessment that was taken a few months ago. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Thompson.
All right. Well, good evening. That's quite the act to follow to talk about budget like that. So I know you have, we're starting kind of like with a heavy heart. You have some big major work ahead of you. And sure. I'm sorry. So I've been there. I understand. And we're going to do this as efficiently as we possibly can because I know that you have other things to do too. I just want to kind of gauge time. What time would you like to be done? So that I can.
There's only 4 of us here. Yeah. You could just read this to us real quick. There's nobody here to discuss it.
Mm-hmm. A half an hour? Okay. Okay. Alrighty. Okay. Okay. So what I need for you, and we'll go in as much as you want. And again, if we're like, okay, we're done, that's okay. We'll get to as much as we possibly can. So in your packets, what I understand, you have a Kenosha Unified School District Annual Board Development Tool. Okay. So that's the big document. Yep. Then you have a form that looks like this that has the mission and vision on the top and the moral imperative. And then you'll have this for notes. Okay. So those are really the 3 things that I want to make sure that you have on hand, and then we can kind of go back and forth with those. So, so the last time you completed this was in 2023. So I know, Jeff, you were here. Who else was here out of the 4 of you who left? Okay, so the 2 of you weren't. All right. So, okay. So that's me. All right, so there are 3 parts to this, and so we'll try to get to the end so that we can determine some priorities for you. That's what's important, that you step away from this meeting knowing, okay, here are a couple of things that we could really dive deep into. The importance of looking at data, one, it makes it real for you, like why are we taking the survey every year or every other year, whatever you commit to, if we're not doing anything with it. So it is really important to study the data, but more importantly is to come away from the study of the data with a goal. And what you're doing then also is being a role model. You expect that from, Jeff, you expect that from district administrators, you expect that from teachers, students. So, that's part of your role as a leader in the district too, is to be a role model. So that's a big reason why we're here. So we're going to do the real quick part will be this essential elements of governance. Okay. I'll just breeze by that. We'll take some time to dive deep into the materials and the data, and then kind of, quickly come to some agreement on an area or 2 that you'll want to focus in on. So the first part is that essential elements of governance. And what's important is, as a board member, is you understand, what does effectiveness mean in your role? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? So the Wisconsin Association of School Boards has this as, how they organize those essential elements. It's quality leadership, it's strategic focus on the future, it's your strategic plan. Accountability, it's, looking at data, and that communication and engagement with staff, with students, and the community. And then that centerpiece, it's all about the kids, right? It's all about their learning. So these are just some, more specifics about those effective characteristics that fall underneath those elements. Vision, belief that all students can learn, the the accountability factor, being data driven, aligning resources. You talked a lot about that tonight. Being collaborative, and taking time to develop like this and train, and having that united leadership relationship with your superintendent. So the purpose of this annual board development tool is really for you to be able to look at all the vast aspects of your role as a board member, and then to identify some areas that you could work on, some areas that you're connected, that you guys all seem to agree upon, that, oh, we're really good at this or we're not so good at that, and then to be able to identify those areas to grow in. So this is what we'll do. We'll talk about strengths and opportunities. We'll highlight some themes, and then we'll get to a point where you can say, okay, this is a good focus area for us. All right. And just a reminder, surveys are and evaluations aren't designed to define us, but to refine us. So don't be afraid of the data. It's really, sort of wrapping your arms around it, embracing it, and saying, how are we going to do better? And how are we going to be better? Because again, it's about the kids. So we're going to start with this slide, and this is the results from 2025. So what I'd like you to do, if you could, let's see here. If you could, so these are the 9 areas, and I also have them on this little sheet here. And if you go to this sheet that I asked you to kind of take out, it's your mission, your vision, and the item analysis. What we're going to be doing is we're going to take these 9 areas and we're going to look at it in a broad way. Like we're going to talk about it from 2025. What are the relative strengths and weaknesses that you see? And then we're going to take it and compare it to 2023. Okay, so how has changed? And then we're going to look at it, how do these results compare to the state? So other boards across the state, how are they ranking themselves in these areas? And then looking at that standard deviation, that's that look at how you rated certain items very uniquely or differently, like that gap, somebody's saying it's a 1 and somebody's saying it's a 4. And that standard deviation, where do those items fall in these 9 areas? Where's the most discourse, if you will, about understanding how proficient you are in that particular area as a board? So, so those are like the 4 areas or 4 lenses that we're looking at. So we're going to start with just the overall 2025. So you can kind of see you have 5 areas that are like 2.7 or higher, and you have 4 areas that are below that. So culture, planning, district operations, and policy. So what I'd like you to do is now open up this sheet, which is the document that School Perceptions coordinated for you. And I'd like you to go to page 13. So what you see here is each of the 9 areas and then the items that fall under each of those areas. Do you see that? So under data-driven decision-making, what is that compiled? That's a plus. That's like 2.78. That's one of your highest. It's your second highest area. What does that mean? That means that you're rating areas such as examining data, your curriculum process, managing facts, relative to the areas that are circled in red. You feel that you do those pretty well. Okay, so that's the first slice. So if you go to page 14, you can see culture, and that's rated lowest at 2.27. What are the scores here in those individual items? And you can see there's a range in the averages where we work with the superintendent in a spirit of mutual respect is a 3.0. But then you have 1.86 at where the board models mutual respect and professional behavior, and the community believes the district is effectively governed and makes decisions with the best interest of students in mind. So you get a sense about what is in that culture area. and take a peek at planning. That's another lower area. And district operations and policy. So what I'm doing over here is I'm going to mark the 3 areas under the 2025 average. This area, culture and planning and district operations and policy. Okay, those are the 4 areas that for the first look at the data would maybe be areas that you consider maybe making a goal in, okay? All right, where's my little clicker? Here. All right. So now we move to the comparison. How did the school board in 2023 score these same areas? So looking at this sheet again, we're just kind of going, you can look up there if you want, but I'm just turning the page here, and it's the 23 average. And you can see the 3 arrows that are pointing down are the 3 areas that went down from 2023. So the good news is out of the 9 areas, 6 of them went up. And I would ask, did you do something specific? Did you have a goal back in 2023 around any of those areas? Or was that sort of lucky? And the reason I bring this up is the more you understand how your behaviors and what you do and the goals that you set for yourself has an impact on these scores or on the, the achievement of Kenosha Unified School District as a whole, the more you're going to see the benefit of setting goals. So if you didn't have any goals around, areas such as, so the areas that went up considerably would be like data-driven decision-making and community engagement, then it's more random. Then it's more lucky that those went up. And you might not be able to, did you have some goals?
I don't think we were lucky. I think that it was intentional, and I think we need to be intentional. Do we set goals like we should? No. But I feel like because of everything that was happening in our community and the stress and the intensified atmosphere that we had and the culture in the community, we were right-sizing. Dr. Weiss did an awesome job on reaching out and being intentional and reaching every single group that we could possibly reach. Right-sizing was intense, and it was a really some hard decisions, and we really had to come together as a whole to be able to make that happen. So I don't think there's luck really in anything. I just it just depends on the atmosphere of what's happening at the time. We've been through so many different obstacles in this district in the last 3 years that I've been on the board, and if you're not very intentional about including the community, and transparency is something that our community is crying for, and so I think we're trying to be a little more, we are being more transparent, such as agenda, review meetings are in the open, and, there's just a lot of dynamics that happen within our board. There's a lot of different personalities. There's a lot of different thoughts and feelings. And so I'd like to see our board get more to facts and more to focusing on what is the outcome for the children and the students, and, and remind ourselves what our board is supposed to be doing. I'd like to see more goal setting. I don't think we do enough of that. I think Dr. Weiss singularly does that because he's good at that. I don't, as a whole, as a board, this is a huge district. I've had people come to these little outreaches in the community, and they're talking, people from different boards, and they're talking, and I'm like, oh, your district is 500 kids. That doesn't even, that's apples and oranges. so that doesn't resonate with me. That's something that, so I'm not listening at that point because I'm like, it doesn't resonate. So, yeah, well, we do this and this on our board, and I'm like, that ain't gonna happen.
Thank you. The goals that are set for the district are like awesome, around math and reading achievement, around a balanced budget, that there's transparency, and that retention and attracting high quality staff. I mean, those are really huge goals. And
so is that what you meant by goals? Is these overall goals?
These are goals that are for your district,
yes,
right? And
yes.
So you're going to see that movement, in the district. Now we're talking about what goals for the board. What
right.
are specific goals as leaders of this system, as board members? Can you wrap your arms around and control? Because a lot of this, you are a board overseeing it,
mm-hmm.
but you aren't like putting forth the administrative efforts to make those changes. You're hearing about what like through Dr. Weiss, what it is. But what can you do, like as leaders, as board members? So, right now we're talking about, is there some culture things that you can do that would then trickle down in the organization as role models to show we are respectful and we treat individuals with, gratitude and value them for what they do and all that kind of stuff. Or is it planning that you want to kind of tackle, or some operations or policy? Right now, we're talking about that. So when we look at 2023 and we look at some areas that decreased, we see culture and planning, same two, that were low, right? And of course, that's going to make it make sense if it's low in 2025, but it dipped in 2023. So these are the three. Now we're seeing some kind of a trend here, and maybe that's going to be an area that you're going to want to, one of those areas you're going to want to focus in on and create a goal for. All right. And there's a lot of detail in this report. So I'm trying to get, kind of spend a half hour doing this, and not getting too much into the weeds with it. I do want to have you get to, let's see, going back to the school perceptions report, now going to page 8, you're going to see that longitudinal item analysis. So what school perceptions did for you is they took each one of the items and they said, how different is it from 2023? So you see that the first item, we regularly communicate with our legislators, that went up by a full point plus. But where does that fall in here? In one of these 9 areas. So I just, on the second page of this document, you'll see each one of these 9 areas. The first column is the state, the 2025 average. The second column is all of these items in green, how they're different from 2023. Okay, so for example, we regularly communicate with our legislators on a particular subject or bill. That's under community engagement. So in this document, if you go into community engagement, which is item 7, you'll see that item listed here and the 1.06 that it went up. So what this document does, and you can use this, as you further analyze your results, is taking each one of the school perceptions slices and putting them right into each of the 9 categories. Community engagement makes sense, went up quite a bit, and it's one of the best areas. So when you talk about, like the growth that Kenosha Unified has shown, you have made intentional effort around making sure, you just talked about going to the, Capitol. So that's super important, and obviously is reflected in here that you're committing to those types of things. So, and then in addition, you'll see that school perceptions also highlighted areas that went down. So in the report, there were 32 items that were increased and 21 that went down. So that's really great. Six of the 9 went up, 3 went down. But I mean, essentially, you're moving that needle and just being intentional and finding a goal. The whole aspect is that you'll be able to kind of raise all of them. All right, so that's comparing with the 2023 results. Now comparing Kenosha with the state. And School Perceptions did that starting on page 4 of their report. So you'll see they do it by item. And you'll see that they start with regularly communicate with their legislators. So that was the same item. Has a stronger, it's higher than the state average, essentially, that item. The difference here with comparing Kenosha's results with the state is that every single one of the 9 areas is below. The smallest is the community engagement, as far as like below the state average. So that red is the state and the blue is Kenosha. The areas that have the largest difference between how the other districts within the state rank themselves in these 9 areas are board operations, culture, planning, and policy. Okay, so now you're seeing a smattering a little bit more with, board operations being added to the red marks, but still culture and planning are the 2 that continue to kind of show up as far as the different layers. Any questions about this? And so when you go back to this document, the document that, has each one of the 9 areas, and then it has the 2025 average, the 2023 average, and now the third column is that state average by item. So you can look at culture again, number 3, and you can see, what are those items that are significantly different than the state. And
So Kelly,
yeah,
one of the questions, not a huge question or anything, talks about sharing services with other districts and stuff. That question would apply more to a smaller district than a larger district. So when we're looking and we're comparing with the state, we're comparing with all of the districts, regardless of size.
exactly.
But there's a number of items here that smaller district would answer totally differently.
Yep.
Okay.
And great point, because that's why it's so important for you to select something that makes sense for you. Yep.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I mean, our planning is never going to improve if the culture doesn't. Everything's going to be. We're going to end on culture. It's going to be our biggest goal. And the reason, our board is made up of. You have board members that have been on the board for a very, very long time. You have 2 new board members. You have 1 outgoing board member. Like on board operations, open comments, poor board ratings since April 2024. That's when me and Sabrina got on the board. I know who said that comment.
Oh.
It's the same person who left today, unexcused, doesn't want to participate in this. Has disrespect. I don't know how to. I can work with anybody. I can hang out. I can go do anything with anybody, except I'm not going to publicly be disrespected by somebody. And I'm on this board. I think she is too, because we were so frustrated with some of the people that are still on the board. That's why I ran. I don't want to run for school board.
Mm-hmm.
And the culture in this community, when you run for school board, they will drag you. I was called a Nazi. They went after her. I mean, it's crazy here. Just to run for school board. It's nuts. It's insane. It's dumb. So culture is a huge. You're probably gonna have to wait till me and Yolanda aren't on the board for that to improve. To be honest with you, because she's proven to me that She hates me or won't work with me, whatever it may be. I don't really care. But at this point, I'm firing right back at her. So I'm not going to improve my culture with her at all. Just throwing that out there publicly. Wish she was here to hear it.
Well, and culture can be not only respectful as a board, but it can also be the culture of having high expectations and keeping the focus on students. So that could be the goal that you feel like you can all embrace. Like, we're not talking about, going out for a beer after, the board meetings, but it's about that we have a culture that we can all agree that we have high expectations for our students, and we put that first and foremost. So how do we create, maybe it's norms, like, so that we know how to behave when we're like at a board meeting together, and we respect that, we all agree upon that. So that might be what it is. You don't all have to love each other and sing.
No, we've
Kumbaya.
had those norms. We've talked about those norms, and then we get in the meeting, and then I'm just telling you, when I say I'm done, I'm done. And I said that 2 meetings ago. That's not going to go away. So recall me, whatever you got to do, but that's what you got.
Yeah. And so, and it is hard work. It's hard work to work together on a common goal and a common expectation of positive culture for students, for the staff that you're supporting, for the community that you represent.
And we're all, everybody on this board, regardless of whether we like each other or not, we're all here to improve this. I know we're all here to improve the situation.
Yeah.
I think that having kids in the district being younger, our expectation for what we should be doing as improving as many things as humanly possible, going as fast as we can to make a difference. That's how we're trying to go like that. Where the older ones it takes time. We need money. People are fleeing the district. Like, I had to pull my kid out of this district after running for school board, getting on the school board because of a decision made about a principal. Now I'm paying, losing money at my job to put my kid in a private school. My other kid's still in our district because of the decisions made by our administration. I think there's a big difference in that. Me and her have a totally different perspective than somebody who's been on numerous boards and local Rotary, whatever. That's cool, but like, you don't have the same skin in the game as we do. Like, I can't afford my kid to be in private school forever. I want my kids in this district. I don't trust this district right now, and I'm here. That's a problem.
It would help if everyone was in attendance to all of the meetings, especially meetings like this. There are certain people on the board that just flat out refuse to work with other people, and it makes things very complicated. I mean, we can try it and it'll seem like things are going fine and, we can work together on things, and all of a sudden last minute change of decision and it's like a stab in the back. If those things could stop happening, I think this board could be something really great, but I don't see that stopping, and that's really unfortunate for this board.
So I understand that you have norms and probably a policy on, okay. So do you hold each other accountable for that? Is that something that you have out? I mean, I don't know your
There's no board
practice.
attendance policy rules. I could literally run for school board, get on the board, and never show up. That's crazy. Taxpayers are paying me to be here. I should have to be here. If I'm not here, you should take that out of my pay. That's hard. Or just don't pay us at all and make us actually volunteer and sit up here like real.
Right. And really it is the community that's voting those individuals in. Right. Okay. So that is one thing that we can talk further about, whether it is something that needs to maybe be brought forward in a different way, or how can the culture from a norm standpoint and holding each other accountable be one part of culture, but the other part being, how do we put differences aside and say, we're here for this reason, and the reason is to make sure that we have students who are ready for the world. So the last item here, because I know I'm trying to be respectful of your time, the standard deviation. Now, this is the area where there are, in this report from School Perceptions on page 12, he has a list of the 15 items that have the highest standard deviations. Now, where do those live in each one of these areas, each of these 9 areas? That's that fourth column for each one of these 9 areas. That fourth column is where those standard deviations are. Interestingly enough, 4 of the 15 are in the data-driven decision making. If you look at all, and so that's like a new X, because that's more than half of those items fall under data-driven. So what is going on that creates this, difference in view from each board member regarding processes that are in place to review programs or curriculum development and things like that. So that's like a discussion. That could also be a goal, understanding what those processes should look like and what's the role of the board. So it's sort of that role responsibility of boards versus administrators, things like that. If you look at all 15 of these, I think a theme that really comes out is this review of data or like programs, like facilities, ensuring culturally relevant learning experiences, orienting new board members, these processy factors. And sometimes those types of things can be addressed just by having it on a calendar. And I don't know if that's what you do. In February every year, you have your capital planning person coming in talking to you about capital planning. That's going to happen. Maybe in February and in October, it's every year you have curriculum coming in and talking about that.
And we do have a calendar, but it's an internal one. I haven't shared it. It's just so we get agenda topics on the board. So maybe it's sharing out that calendar would help be more, people would know then what the plan is.
That's a great idea, actually, because that might create less standard deviation. People would understand that.
So a board president or a former board president be aware of that calendar. And if you weren't, because we kind of go through that when we have our agenda meetings. And if you're not, you wouldn't know about it. So I guess that's one of those, I can see that being a high standard deviation because of that.
Mm-hmm. So it might not be something that you need to have a goal, and it kind of goes along with, some things that you just do, and you might see, the standard deviations decrease and more understanding, and this data-driven decision-making, which is high in many other ways. Every single one of these areas increased or stayed the same from 2023. So things are moving along, and so maybe a little bit more of a tweak there could help that.
And just to that point, so on the agenda review, we talked about we had the capital update that Patrick wasn't here that I kind of just talked about. That's one of those how we review program. That's one of those calendared events that we do every year. So I think it's just being more explicit would help people understand that.
Yeah, like with the capital, it would have been helpful for, I know me and Sabrina were talking, I didn't really know what all right, yeah, I'll go to the Capitol. That sounds awesome. Let's go up there and talk. And then the day before we were serving soup, we got the form, and it was like, well, that's not enough time for me if I want to go, if this is what we're focused on when we're going to the Capitol, give me some time to put let me get my information so I can send a zinger at one of the legislators or put my 2 cents, we kind of just sat there going, well, Dr. Wise thought, because I didn't have enough time to really know what I could have asked more questions. Maybe I just don't know the right questions to ask as a newer member, but stuff like that would be helpful. Just a heads up. Hey, you guys volunteered for the Capitol a month out. This is what we're going to be doing,
Yeah, good. All right. That's great. Okay. So then in the PowerPoint, it's just, each one of these 9 areas and then the 4 slices essentially of how we're looking at this, how the board responded. Here's an example of like a calendar that could be created. Also, with planning, you could have multi-year. I know that I believe it was your curriculum director who talked about that. ELA wasn't up for review for three years. Curriculum often has a multi-year calendar, but you can put all of your key work processes into a calendar. So okay, when are we going to be going through insurance? When are we doing this? When are we doing this? So, and not that you have to be agile because Act 20 happens and other things happen, but at least you have a structure that you can say, we are planners. We know what we're going to be going through things. So again, it's just a suggestion. And you likely have something internally like that. And yeah, sharing it out. So these are just the 9 areas. So if we look at this document, you know, just from the standpoint of looking at those 4 slices of the data, culture and planning, and then with the standard deviation, the data driven, but we talked about some kind of easy ways of like making changes with that. You know, that could be something that the board decides to focus in on. Do you think that there's anything else in, like, just as you were reviewing the information over culture and planning that you would want the board to at least consider? Any other of the 9 areas?
Community engagement. I understand that it did go up, but right now our community needs engagement and that building of trust more than ever. With the failed referendum, we need to work on that really hard. So.
And sometimes when you work on something like culture, and you are demonstrating to the people here and outside respect, communication, high expectation for student learning, that you're committed to that, you have a goal on that, you know, like as a board, that can be tremendously like supportive to the community. They can see that as something.
I suppose that shouldn't be so disheartening to me, right?
What does that mean?
Yeah, because I agree a lot with 100% on the transparency and trust, because that's the communication went up because we were trying to get a referendum passed. So obviously we're communicating a ton with the community. That's why that went up. Otherwise, I think our community engagement sucks when it comes to everything besides trying to get a referendum passed. I'm sorry, we don't reach our Spanish speakers very well at all. That was brought up during the town halls. We failed to hit them very well. I know the emails that it's hard to keep track of your kid if you're actually paying attention with how we communicate. So that just that direct communication from school to teacher to parent needs to improve. Yeah. I can't do that. And then, you know, maybe it'd be a good idea for this year, start of the year after this election, get a new board. Why don't we put 3 goals, all of us, right? What are 3 things you want to work on? What do you want to improve? And I go, oh, I agree with you on that. Hey, let's get together and try to improve this. Maybe that would help our culture, because like everybody says they want to do things when they're running for school board, and then you get elected and you're like, okay, these people said this when I was running with them. Let's do it. No, we're not doing that. Okay. So, you know, maybe put goals down and we can all work together on, maybe we all agree on the same 3 goals, and guess what? We could make more goals. Maybe by the end of the year we have 20 and we accomplish 20 good things, or what we think are good things, and maybe they fail, but that's, policies are working documents, you know? So, and I would like to see us be more proactive and reactive with our policy. Like after the incident in Roseville, I really would have loved to see the board immediately wanting policy, or where they found that we didn't find a gun. We could have easily write a wanting policy. If kids getting searched for a weapon, beep, beep, beep. That's easy. We have the wands, but we haven't even talked about it. We don't react to situations. They're like, we had an incident years ago, and I was on the board with how security detained a female student with a knee on the neck. George Floyd happened before that. As soon as that happened, we should have looked at our policy. Hey, we need to put something in here. So never ever in our district could a knee ever go on. It would have avoided that whole thing. Huge lawsuit. Like that's one thing I don't think when a situation happens, we don't get we still never talked about. Like I heard about Roosevelt and what happened there. I would love to sit down and go over that, because I think we failed more than we succeeded. We just got lucky. But we should have all went over that whole entire situation. All right, we're the board. We're supposed to write policies. Well, damn, what policies should we change after this situation? We never realized that because we never had a kid show up with a backpack full of whatever. You know what I mean? Like, we're not doing that. And that's where the public, something happens to a student by a teacher, we should be jumping on that. That should be on the next agenda. We got to look at this. We got to stop this from ever happening again. And maybe that's where I disagree, or some of the other board members. Like, that's where I think our role is. Like, we should be constantly making improvements and changing. Like, behavior is a big issue, huge issue. We haven't ever sat down and talked about, maybe we should change the way we handle behavior. Maybe we can't afford the current way we're handling behavior.
So I'm hearing like the reaction,
we're not being
responsiveness of different things that might happen that would suggest or reveal some type of hole in a policy or in a practice or something. And so how responsive is the board?
We're not. We're just waiting for them to tell us what they want to do.
Okay. And you know, part of this is, you know, you got to kind of take a step, right? You got to take a step. If this hasn't been something that's part of the culture of the board to write a goal and kind of embrace it and say, we're going to work on this. And these are the action steps. And so take something that you feel that you can do, and it might be, engagement of the community. It might be something around policy or something around responsiveness. It could be anything. It really can. This data is just what it is. It gives you a lens to look through that says, these are some areas that as a group, you're showing that there might be some opportunity, to grow. But you don't have to choose these. You can choose something else. But what you do have to do is you have to come to a consensus as a board, and that's not always easy. But with 4 people, we can do that. If you want, or 5, we could add you. I mean, like, you just put dots where you think that you want it, or you take this and say, let's do this with the board at a different time, and you want to have all 7 of you here at a retreat in the summer or something like that. I mean, I want to respect all kinds of things that are going on right now, and I don't want to rush this. I don't want to, make you do something that you just don't feel maybe is the right time to do.
I have an idea, and Bob, I just want to say something so you know that just the Roosevelt. I didn't share this out, but I was part of, after that incident, we had an after-action review with the KPD, with the Sheriff's Department, with Pleasant Prairie Police Department, Fire, and the Police Department. It was at their building, and we did an after-action review on that. We talked about, and we went through it, and we found holes in our processes and procedures, and we've changed our plans as a result of that, and that really is, and I think that's one of the things that I need to get better at, and I think we need to get better at, is understanding where so as the superintendent, I see that as my job, right? My job is to meet with those municipalities, meet with our first responder partners, make sure that we have got the right people at the table, review that, make sure I'm doing everything I can to keep kids safe. How the board fits into that piece, I see it as a reporting out piece, and I don't want you to view it as me telling you to do something, but it's based on, some of that is coming from that work that we did by reviewing it and by talking to the people who were there, and because it was a pretty extensive process we had. So I think what we need to do is figure out, it's kind of like learning, you got a new partner, where are you going to go? Where am I going to go? How are we going to work together to make sure that I'm giving you the information so that you know that I'm taking this seriously, and that I'm working with everybody that I can to make sure that we're keeping kids safe, because that's what I'm doing. And how do you, so how can I give you that comfort level? And then what support do I need from you to do that, to make sure that as we come up with ideas that they're being vetted, and you're making sure you can have comfort that, I'm doing all the right stuff. So I just think we need to figure out how do we move together on some of this stuff, so that there's not doubt that we're taking care of everything. You know what I mean? I don't like that doubt. So I just wanted to mention that with that Roosevelt thing, because that was one of the scariest moments I had as an administrator, as an educator ever, probably as a person. It was up there. Scariest things that I've had to deal with. And I want you to know that I do take it extremely seriously, and I do. So I just felt the need to say that.
No, and I'm not doubting you, and I'm not.
And I wasn't taking that as a personal attack, Bob.
Right,
but
no. But
how do we work better together?
You do the AAR with the police. That's your role. That's you, Mr. Haythel. That's your. But policies weren't followed that day. Maybe policies could be changed to better improve this situation. We weren't told what happened. Yeah. We don't even know I know that a kid got in a building that shouldn't have been in the building. That's policy broken. Could the board change the policy to ensure that never happens again? We don't know, because we don't know exactly what happened.
Right.
2, the second door entrance was open with that teacher that stopped him. I forgot his name.
The office, yeah.
Yeah. So now you have your second entrance open. Mm-hmm. A kid that shouldn't be in a building with a backpack full of potential guns. Had that been a real gun, that kid's in that school. That's secured. We failed. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. You could have 17 entrances, If we let the kid in 17 entrances, it doesn't matter how many entrances. But that's what I'm saying. We don't know what happened. We don't know the facts. We don't know. We didn't see the video. We see Kenosha Eye's version. We see Channel 7's version. And then I brought it up before. I was like, are we going to have an AAR? And you said, well, that'd be a board policy.
Right.
But then
Well,
that just falls on.
And I also asked for an update meeting after that, practically begged
So-
for it. And it's things like that where we feel like we're left in the dark.
Sure, and it's how do I share that information in a setting that's not public? So when I have something like that, it doesn't qualify to do it in closed session. There's very strict things that we can talk about in closed session, and talking about that doesn't qualify for closed session. So the only other way would be to either have smaller groups, but we wanted to move away from that in the name of transparency. So now we have these larger meetings that are in the public, and I really don't want to show our safety stuff that happened with kids' faces in a public meeting. So it's a challenge to do that. But anyway, I that's a little bit off topic. I kind of went down the rabbit hole, but I thought it was an important one to go down. I'm wondering if at the next board meeting in March, I know this, that this is the agenda review for, do we want to give people a chance to, based on what you've seen, and let other people watch? I heard that they were going to watch this video and kind of take the information that was presented. Do we want to set a goal or come with goals to be set as an agenda item at the March meeting? So have board goal setting. This is something that I can either assist with or back out of. I see this as your work. District goals is to our earlier point, that's my sandbox, right? I'll do the district goals and do that work. Do we want to have a separate agenda item for the board to come up with 2 or 3 or 1 or whatever you want? Number of board goals based on the data of this survey. So I wanted to, as I was hearing this and as I was thinking, we almost called and said we need to reschedule because we don't have a full board here to have this discussion, and I think it's important that the whole board is part of this.
So in a hospital setting, when we have someone code or passes away after they've coded, we have a debriefing and we all get together and we're like, what could have you done better? Should we stop the code? What were the rules and the regulations of stopping the code? And, we have policy and so we debrief. It's hard because we don't have a quorum, or we don't have a walking quorum. We don't have that, all the nurses and doctors get together. We don't have those challenges that we have here. It'd be really awesome if we didn't have that where we could all get together. That's not going to happen. So I'm trying to figure out, as you're talking, how could we debrief a situation like that where we could say, hey, let's get together and work on a policy, or let's get together and, that is one of our main jobs, like policy, approving policy. I honestly don't know how that happens in any district, because you can't have all 7 there to be able to work on policy unless you have an open session and it's taped or recorded. So, it's hard to be able to say, I really think we should work on this. And I really think that we should put, the goal of, let's say Act 20, and we're going to really focus on kids reading, and let's make a, policy, and let's move forward. That's really difficult. Unless I sit at home, make a policy, and come forward and say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Mm-hmm. It is a
Have work sessions here? Do you have? Yeah. And do you record them? Oh, you do. Okay.
Could we add a policy committee? Because you guys said you had that before.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
but change how you do that.
Yeah, and the thing is, we can take. I think we definitely need to take a look at the committee structure. One of the things, and I know that do you want to talk a little bit about? We use the WASB policy resource guide, and we have an internal. It's internal. It's not. I mean, this is one of those things that you need to see, where we did a quick check, got all of our policies reviewed, and now we're working through getting them updated. I know Neola also offers a service. Those are the 2 where Neola basically gives you, here's your 5,000 series policies. and there's a review, and you approve them. And if you ever get sued because your policy was out of didn't match law, they'll cover it. But those are really the two major policy services, I guess, that I'm aware of. I don't know if you know of others.
And WASB, I mean, that's a good tool. It's good to have somebody going through. But at the same, WASB is just giving you a generalization, like we saw with that little chart, and you were talking about. So, like, KUSD needs different rules probably for behavior than a school out in rural nowhere. They have different demographics. They have different struggles. They have different poverty levels. They have different. We don't ever WASB gives. We've never looked at behavior, and I always get the excuse. Well,
Right.
this is federal law. Well, let's sit down and talk about that then.
Right. And I would say there's a difference between policy and there's a difference between practice or administrative guidelines. Policy would be much more general, like we want our schools to be free of disruption. Then the practice is everything that happens in the school. And so the board says, superintendent, make sure that our schools are free of disruption. Then I get a team together and say, here's how we're going to do that. And there wouldn't be to the level of, a fight is an automatic X. That wouldn't be in policy. And that was actually probably a really bad idea to put it in practice. But anyway, those are some of the challenges as a board member coming into this and understand, just kind of wrapping your mind around what's the difference between policy and practice.
Oh, I understand. It's like we have classroom behavior policy. That's a policy. There's a policy out there for that. Talk to your teachers. They can't control their classroom. Let's sit down and figure out a different policy. Because what we're doing right now, to me, if you do X, you get Z. That's how law works. That's how the world works. You do this wrong, here's your punishment. I don't care about anything else. You punched a kid in the face. You get the same punishment whether you're whatever your skin color is, whatever your gender, whatever your sexuality, it doesn't matter. Your behavior should be treated the same. That's equitable. That's inclusive. Everybody's treated the same.
Unfortunately, Bob, there are different rules regarding.
Well, then let's sit down and talk. Show those rules. Let's go over that.
Special education students and IDEA.
Well, then let's sit down and go through that. Okay. And can we adjust our policy? We have to change something because we can't control behavior.
We do have the policy. The policy, it's more the practice, and
Okay, well then, Dr. Wise, fix behavior this year, please.
Yes.
And if you don't,
Okay, so back to the goal thing.
So my suggestion was that at the next board meeting where we put this out and ask board members to come with either, I don't know, to come with your ideas for goals around two areas, maybe culture and planning are the ones that seem to be the highest areas of need.
This is an example in the packet of like how you could write that. What are some specifics? So you would write what area it is, what objective, which would really be like an item underneath one of those 9 areas. Just pick one that you can start to focus in on. And then what actions do you want to take around that? So
is that in here?
That is part of this. Yeah. And actually, Stacy has the PowerPoint too. So,
Yeah. We can't
oh, yeah,
read that.
you would have it too. Yes, Denise would have it too. Yeah. So she can just send that right out to you too.
Oh, you mean you're just going to email it? All right.
Then you have a sample, and I'd be happy to.
All right, go back.
Anything else? Oops.
Go back 3 slides. One more.
One more. And those X's would be whatever 2 areas or area that you'd want to put in. If you want to put culture and planning, or if you want to put, the engagement for the community, whatever areas you would like.
Yeah, that's good. We should really look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, because I'm feeling we're coming to the end.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so intuitive. The mission, I think, is okay. but ever since I've been on this board and when I was campaigning to be on the board, the
Mhm.
vision statement drives me wild. It's grossly not a vision statement. It's not, this is not an accurate depiction. This was done years and years ago, and it doesn't make any sense to me. This is not, a vision is based on collective values, provides the foundation for staff, community, students, success, and sustained school growth. That vision statement does not say that. That is not a measurable, attainable.
When is your
At this
strategic
time.
plan up? When? Oh, it's overdue. Okay, that's something that
We've had this discussion,
Yeah.
Dr. Weiss and I, and
Yeah.
I'm like, drives me wild.
so
And
the
yeah.
From the operations standpoint, strategic planning, if it's something that would be coming due, that's perfectly logical to review your mission and your vision and your values and
Well, we did the moral imperatives, which we worked really hard at that. Mission, it's one sentence. That's what, if you look online about how to develop a mission statement, it's on target. It's one statement. It's one sentence. We're okay. Well, I mean, anything can be better, but the vision, I mean, really,
what do you
are
aspire
we really
to
going to
become?
be, we're in the bottom, whatever. We're not going to be Wisconsin's top performing urban school district. We've been saying this for 10 years.
One thing too,
Yeah, but-
just on the when I came in, there was a lot to do when I came in,
Wait,
and I want
can,
everybody
can we
to,
back up? What are you saying? We're number 2.
out of the big 5 school districts on the state report card, we're number 2 behind Madison as far as state report card.
But it doesn't say Big 5. It says to be Wisconsin's top performing urban school district
Right.
that is highly regarded for continually exceeding all
So-
expectations.
The big
Yeah.
5 are the urban.
Yeah, Kenosha, Green Bay, Madison,
Yeah.
and it
Okay,
needs,
if that's
So
what
those are
you
your
want to
benchmarks.
But if
compare
people are-
yourself to, all right.
right, and that was So when I came in, there was a lot of work to do, and we talked about strategic planning as a half a year at least process. We settled on coming up with district goals as our way to that's where the strategic plan, that's where the action happens, is in the strategic goals. So the alignment of those district goals to the existing was how we worked with that. I understand that it's a good idea to always look at the vision, the mission, and the goals and review that. We did a shortcut. We did the goals, and we did the idea with the moral imperative was to combine a few things. So it really wasn't a traditional strategic plan setting, but we did some elements of it that gave us some goals and gave us some direction at that time.
Well, yeah, that's great. And if your vision was set many years ago to be a top urban district, and maybe it's different now, but congratulations on being number 2. I mean, that's great. And move from there. And what's the next benchmark you want to, as a district, want to compare yourselves to, and work toward?
I'm talking to the board, not really to you, but you're included. That, if our reading scores are low and our math is low and overall, we rank low, United States low, then it's just a dumb vision statement. Anyways.
Well, I appreciate it on behalf of WASB. Thank you for your commitment, really, truly, to just improvement. And it doesn't come easy. I know it takes a lot of time.
Thank you for the Capitol Day yesterday. That was cool. I wish, like I said, that was really cool. Thank you for that. You guys did a good job.
Yeah.
The Capitol event yesterday was WASB. Second.